evening, everyone. I'm Heather Armstrong.
And I'm Scott Hackworth. Over the past 3 nights, we have brought you the memories of the people who lived through the violence that accompanied the struggle for civil rights. And we've showed you the poverty and the racial injustices that still exist in Selma, Alabama today. Tonight, you'll meet a former Wisconsin man who chose to set aside his own career and do what he could to help. News 19's Jenna Rowe recently returned from Selma, where she covered the 50th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday March, and is here to tell you John Gainey's story. Jenna?
Scott, 25-year-old John Gainey first traveled to Selma as a college student. The people he met there changed his life forever. Menominee native John Gainey had no idea how a little Alabama town would transform his life.
Wisconsin is a very different environment than rural Alabama.
John got his first glimpse of Selma as a student at UW River Falls. A service learning trip to Selma changed his life.
Like so many young people today, I was just looking for a cause and looking for something greater than myself to be able to dedicate my life to. And when I came down to Selma for a week, I saw a group of people that were really trying to make a community better.
That group is the Freedom Foundation, a nonprofit created to carry on Dr. King's dream.
I have a dream that...
What we have been trying to do in Selma is not just identify issues and make it just purely a white and black thing, but talk about where the oppression comes in and action and reaction.
And they're doing that through the kids of Selma. Random Acts of Theater Company, or RATCO, is the Freedom Foundation's youth flagship program.
RATCO means life to me. It's a place where you can go to be free and be yourself and have fun.
Song and dance are keeping these kids off the streets. It's a glimmer of hope in a city with so much hardship.
I was in a very dark place before I met RATCO, and when I met RATCO, it just changed my life completely. If everyone joined RATCO, this world would probably be a better place.
So where does Wisconsin man John Gainey come in? Let's just say the kids made quite the impact. John was on a fast track to med school.
I told him not to come. And I have this mental image now that the whole time I'm telling him that, he's like packing up his bag, like, okay, Gwen, okay.
But Selma was a passion he couldn't shake.
There's a stubbornness about him that is really good. And there was something in his heart that he had to come, and nothing was going to stop him.
After 3 years in Selma, John is following in the footsteps of those before him, leading the movement of today, Students Unite.
A group of students that are addressing the social issues like social segregation and the racial opportunity gap that still exists in Selma and towns like it today.
Student Unite's goal: to honor the past and build the future.
It's a direct parallel between the foot soldiers of '65 and those of today.
They're marching for the change Selma needs to see, tackling issues like social segregation and racial injustices.
Students Unite is Selma now.
And in Selma, now there is hope. All the way from Menominee, John Gainey found purpose. Now he's asking the rest of Wisconsin to jump on board.
People in Wisconsin should care about what's happening in Selma, because an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Even 1,000 miles away, Selma's history and its future belongs to us all. One of Students Unite's goals is to rename the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Edmund Pettus was a senator, a Confederate general, and a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan.
Having that name up on the bridge is the antithesis of what we're trying to do here in Selma in bringing the community together. So we want to get the name off that bridge because it's a symbol of what would divide this community.
Change.org reached out to Students Unite to start a petition to change the name of the bridge. So far, they have over 170,000 signatures. John says it's just one way he can do his part to carry on Dr. King's dream.
Jenna, this was not your first trip to Selma. You've been interested in civil rights for a number of years now. What was the most memorable part of your visit last week?
You know, Scott, it would have to be meeting these kids. It was just incredible to see how in the face of so much adversity, they're still marching on, trying to overcome these racial tensions that are still very much alive in the city today.
Yeah, the smiles are incredible down there. Thanks, Jenna. Right now, all of the Freedom Foundation Students Unite, the Freedom Foundation Students Unite, and the Random Acts of Theater Company, they do all of their work out of church basements and living rooms and empty classrooms. They're trying to renovate an old building so that the youth movement in Selma can officially have a home. To help Selma reach that dream, you can go to buildteppers.org.